Right, let's get you more reaction on this, and to help us make sense of the latest developments, keeping in mind that we're waiting for that report to be made public tonight, is Dr Ongama Mtimka, a political analyst. Doc, thank you very much for availing yourself this afternoon. Perhaps let's go back to this moment, right, and trying to assess the significance of this particular moment when Justice Ngcobo was explaining why the panel's work was important.
Dragging the president before an impeachment process is a huge decision. It cannot be done on flimsy grounds. There has to be something tangible that you can hold on to before you take that decision. That's why there was a panel.
Dr Ongama Mtimka, political analyst, is with us. Doc, again, thank you very much for availing yourself. Given that the Section 89 inquiry was tasked with establishing whether there's a prima facie case for a process of impeachment, which is something that he explained that it should not be done flimsily, how should we understand this in the context of yet having to see or hear anything from the South African Reserve Bank, from the South African Revenue Services, IPID, etc.?
So the value of the work that has been done by the panel, regardless of what the specific outcome is going to be, is in bringing together the claims and counterclaims that have been made in the public domain, which, whether or not they were processed in a manner similar to the one that has been now undertaken, were having direct consequences on, one, the credibility of the president, but also on his political prospects, but also on perceptions about whether, as a country, we are tolerating the continued leadership of somebody who should not be in office. So I don't agree with the sentiments that because the report may have limitations as far as finding the president guilty, or in the process of gathering evidence. Therefore, the weight that the recommendations carry is not an upgrade from the information that was available in the public. That's one of the big things that should be taken into account here, because it's going to introduce rationality to what otherwise was political football. So now what you have, should Parliament end up voting on what course of action to take on the 6th of December, we will be able to measure whether that is an exercise in power use or it's a rational exercise, because there would have been this process where people have mined through the data, the claims and counterclaims, and be able to establish what is a rational position to take going forward. And that's big, that's important.
Sure. Speaking to the ATMs, Violet Zungula a little bit earlier on, wanting that vote to happen in secret, would that then test what Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula was calling as this being a moment or a milestone in South Africa's constitutional democracy?
So the desire for secret ballots in South Africa is not unrelated to the fact that the opposition acknowledges that the ANC is a powerful force in the National Assembly, and as such, if people didn't have the cover of secrecy, would not openly vote against their sitting president. And also it's an acknowledgement that you need ANC divisions in order to take actions against members of the executive and have those pass. So what Zungula is hoping for there is to exploit divisions within the ANC in order to ensure that this motion, a possible motion, may be carried out against the president. It is a principle that should be taken seriously into consideration in instances where there's a lot of evidence against the bad conduct of a sitting president, and the majority party is likely to defend them. In an instance where there are allegations which are damning, but there are still greater battles being fought where the president is actually, in good faith supporting institutions that are bringing about better law enforcement in the country. A secret ballot there I don't think it will help a lot, because it will allow people whose agenda may not necessarily be pala, but a pushback against the rebuilding of law enforcement agencies to actually vote. But if it was the case, for example, that you already had a negative finding from the public protector, you already had a negative finding from this committee and some other committee, then a secret ballot would be very justified there, because the likelihood that people would toe the party line as opposed to acting based on what is clearly rational would be very high. So my answer here is that it depends on the political context as to what mode of voting one can support.
Doc, less than 4 or 5 hours after the ceremonial handover of this independent panel report to Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, the Speaker of Parliament, there is a report in circulation, a 138-page document that is said to be President Cyril Ramaphosa's submission to the independent panel, where allegedly he's saying, well, they should not look into this matter, and pointing out why they shouldn't. Given that the African National Congress itself is yet to release its own report, and also these other institutions that we spoke about, SARS, SARB, etc., what should we read into that, if anything at all?
My hope is that the committee noted the request but took a rational way forward. We cannot have every institution in the country held back by President Cyril Ramaphosa on technical grounds. The interest to say, it would be interesting to see what the rationale is for making such a motivation. But to me, the way in which the investigation was done by the security apparatus into the breaking into the president's office, the keeping of forex, I wouldn't be comfortable with the silencing of potential watchdogs in the country, because President Cyril Ramaphosa must be vulnerable enough to let the information come out there so that we as a country can decide whether or not he's right for continuing with the job of rebuilding. Otherwise, the claims that what's happening in terms of increased prosecutions by the law enforcement agencies is in fact factional, would gain legitimacy. And when you rebuild institutions, that's the last thing that you want to be dealing with, the perception that a sitting president is in fact using these agencies as a revised version of the president's keepers.
Doc, you speak of vulnerability. Let's mine us today for the purpose of this conversation, right? In 16 days' time, the African National Congress will be tasked with electing leaders at their highest echelon, including the position of president of the party. According to his campaign manager, this is almost, a foregone conclusion, and there are those in his camp who believe the same if you take a look at the numbers in terms of the nomination process. But when we speak of vulnerability and when we speak of perceptions, which is a word that you also touched on, how do you perceive that he walks into this elective conference?
Well, I'm going to add humility there. So if the president, if the report of the panel is negative in any way, the president must humble himself enough to recognize that he may not be the person best placed to continue what he has started, that he leverages all of that political capital for a successor who has got a lot more runway and has got and cannot is not likely, at least in terms of what we know now, to embroil the presidency in scandal. I think that also it would be irresponsible for him, based on where the fight is at the moment, to simply pull out without making measures to ensure that power in this upcoming conference of the ANC falls to the side of those that still are making concerted efforts to rebuild both the party and the state. When I make claims or calls for the president to reconsider whether or not he is the right person to continue the fight for rebuilding institutions, I'm not making it not mindful of the very reality that the opponents are people who are in fact challenging the extent to which we rebuild institutions in order to build law enforcement agencies with tooth. So I'm making it very mindful of that, and as such, that's why I'm saying the president should explore ways in which to take the political capital he's been able to gain and position a successor or a group of successors that are going to take the fight forward.
On the other side of the coin, if President Cyril Ramaphosa is crystallized as the victim, for lack of a better word, which is the undertone that you get throughout this process at least, should then this issue be put not necessarily to bed, but should it quench some fires?
To the extent that the allegations going that driver's license testing centers are protesting to make sure that the cost of bribery is reduced from an imminent rise. You could say they were victims then if that rise happened. But is it a legitimate concern? If you have kept money illegally in your home, or potentially illegally, and it gets stolen, indeed you are a victim. But the question is, why did you, in the first place, did you have foreign currency in your home when it's not allowed to happen?
Fair enough. Doc, and our viewers do allow us to digress. Statanje, you got your PhD. A big congratulations to you. It's no small feat. People lose their minds during this process. Zubanjan?
Much appreciated. Well, very happy, Kakulu. I can't wait to walk that stage in 2 weeks' time.
We can't wait to see the pictures. Once again, congratulations, and thank you for your indulgence this afternoon.
Thank you.